Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're still in the middle of chapter 21 at the feet of Maulana Jalaluddin in his Fihi ma Fihi. So let's start, as we usually do, with a recap of the previous section. Last week, we read this section where Maulana talks about the faqihan, the fuqaha, jurists, legalists. So Maulana says they are clever people. In their own art, in their own skill, they're clever. They have 20/20 vision. They know what they're doing. But there is a hijab, there is a barrier, there is a veil between them and the other world. And that barrier is reducing religion to a set of rules, reducing religion to what Maulana calls yajuz and la yajuz, permitted and not permitted. So that's what's commonly called fiqh. But the Quranic term, the fiqh understanding, is broader than that. It's more general than that. Whereas a small part of that is yajuz and la yajuz, to what you should do and what you should not do. But religion is broader than that. There is what Maulana calls binesh, seeing, vision. There is that element of tazkiyah, cleansing. And also in the Quran, you see that the verses that talk about legal rules, there are some estimations, there are 100 verses, 150 verses, 200 verses. But the majority of the Quran, 95% of the Quran, it's not about rules. It's not about you shall do this, you shall not do this. Most of the Quran, it's about that binesh, that giving us that vision, that seeing and cleansing and knowing God, knowing the hereafter. So there is fiqh, which tells us these are the things that you should do, these are the things that you shouldn't do. But that binesh, that seeing, tells us why we should do this, for whom we're doing this. So yeah, Maulana says, the jurists, the fuqaha, they're clever people, but they have this veil, they have this barrier, they have imprisoned themselves in this walled prison. But then, as Maulana usually, he always looks at the positive as well. He always looks at the bright side of things as well. So he says, despite all of this, this is also khair, this is also maslahah, this is also divine providence, because you have the ocean and you have the foam of the ocean. And it is Allah's will that some people should turn their back to the ocean and be busy with the foam so that the foam will be cultivated. If there were no jurists in the world, so fiqh is not the ultimate aim, but if there were no legalists, if there were no fuqaha, then people would devour themselves. There would be no harmony. So we need those fuqaha so that we have harmony, so that people don't fight with each other every day, so that there is equilibrium in the world. And he gave the example, the analogy of a tent. Imagine there is a tent, people are making a tent for the king to come in, and there are all sorts of people all working together to make this tent. There is a weaver, there is a rope maker, there is a peg maker, there are different occupations. And all of them, they think their occupation is the best. So that's again God's will. That's again Allah's providence, that the weaver thinks there's nothing more noble than weaving. And he is right, because if the weaver leaves his job, if the weaver becomes leaves his job and becomes a prime minister, and all the weavers in the world do that, everyone would be naked. We do need weavers in the world. We do need jurists in the world. We do need philosophers. We do need theologians, because there are different aspects. There's the law, there is intellectual aspects, but Maulana says all of these people are here so that the tent is established. But the wali of Allah is the one for whom this tent is established. So this whole dunya is made for him. Akhirah is made for him. And the wali of Allah is made for Allah. As in the Quran, وَاصْطَنَعْتُكَ لِنَفْسِي. Allah Ta'ala says to Moses, Musa alayhi salam, who represents, in this case, all of the prophets and all of the awliya, I made you for myself. So the wali of Allah is not made for this world. It's not made for the akhirah. Rather, this world and the next world is made for him. And others, all they're like those people working together to make that tent. And Allah Ta'ala gives each person love for the occupation that he is engaged in. And every day his love for that labor increases. And that's Allah's wisdom. So he gains pleasure. He derives joy from what he's doing. And in what he's doing, he's praising God. So everyone has a different praise, each in his own way, each in his own language. The rope maker has one kind of praise. The carpenter has one kind of praise. The steak maker has one kind of praise. And so it is with all the different sciences in Islam. So the faqih has his own way of praising God. The intellectuals have their own way of praising God, and so on. But yeah, Maulana is not against fiqh, he's not against intellectual sciences, but he's against reducing religion to one aspect or the other. Because religion is broader than that. So you cannot reduce this tent just to the ropes or just to the pegs or just to this or that. No, you need all of that. You need all of that should come together for this tent to be made. But this tent is made for the king, for the wali of Allah, who is the mirror of that king of kings.
Just regarding fiqh and its meaning as used by Maulana, I was found that in the preface, the Arabic preface of to the first volume of the Masnavi, after this term fi usuli usul-ud-din, and fi kashfi asrari usul wal yaqin wa huwa fiqhullah al-akbar wa shar'ullah al-azhar. It is mentioned that wa huwa fiqhullah al-akbar. Regarding the Masnavi, Maulana himself says that wa huwa fiqhullah al-akbar. And I thought that was very significant use of the word fiqh in as to describe the Masnavi itself.
Because these words become labels after a while. So fiqh, when Allah Ta'ala in the Quran talks about fiqh, it's understanding the reality of things. So it's really deeper than yajuz and la yajuz. But in ordinary, everyday language, when we say fiqh, we mean someone who knows those rules, has studied those rules and that science really well. So fiqh became reduced to that. And usul ad-din, again, it's roots of religion, right? The roots, the invisible roots of religion. But then usul ad-din became used as kalam. So if Maulana's in the introduction to the Masnavi, he says, this is about usul ad-din, people would think, oh, this is a kalam book. This is a book on theology. But he adds another usul. So he says, usul ad-din. This is the foundations of that. What you call the kalam. This is the foundation. This is the roots of the roots. And this is the fiqhullah al-akbar. This is the greater fiqh. So, and, in Masnavi, you have everything. You have both. You have abiyat in the Masnavi, verses in the Masnavi that are intellectual. They're abiyat that are concerning kalam issues. There are parts of the Masnavi that are about fiqh, or they reference some fiqhi ruling, and then they come, the deeper aspect of it. So, yeah, Maulana, in that introduction, in the Arabic introduction, he's saying there is everything in this book. There's fiqh, and ultimately, kashaf al-Quran. This is the book that opens the Quran to you. The meanings of the Quran become clear. So, kashaf al-Quran.
I was just thinking, actually in the Arabic preface, it's mentioned 3 times usuli, usul-ud-din. Just add, I think Maulana adds another bit of to make it unambiguously clear, or even it may be read as something beyond even the what is usually called Sufi or whatever mystical understanding. This is one level beyond that, or rather, it may say that it's something beyond the beyond even of what you can think. It seems to be.
So yeah, that's a very characteristic of Maulana. He says a lot of people talk about aql, the intellect, but Maulana says yes, you have the intellect, but you also have the intellect of the intellect, aql. So it means the deeper aspect of what you call aql, what you call intellect. There's an intellect of the intellect, and then there is Maulana says ab, ab, there's water, but there's a water of the water. So he's doing the same thing, the roots of the roots of the roots. So 3 levels, right? Going deeper and deeper and deeper.
اکنون این قوم که بر ما می آیند اگر خاموش می کنیم ملول می شوند و می رنجند و اگر چیزی می گوییم لایق ایشان می باید گفتن ما می رنجیم. می روند و تشنه می زنند که از ما ملول است و می گریزد. هیزم از دیگ کی گریزد؟ الا دیگ می ریزد طاقت نمی دارد. الا دیگ می گریزد طاقت نمی دارد. پس گریختن آتش گریختن هیزم نیست، بلکه چون او را دید که ضعیف است از وی دور می شود. پس حقیقت علا کل حال دیگ می گریزد. پس گریختن ما گریختن ایشان است. ما آینه ایم. اگر در ایشان گریزی است در ما ظاهر می شود. ما برای ایشان می گریزیم. آینه آن است که خود را در وی بینند. اگر ما را ملول می بینند آن ملالت ایشان است. برای آنکه ملالت صفت ضعف است. اینجا ملالت نگنجد و ملالت چه کار دارد؟ The mirror of weariness. If I'm silent, the people who come to me will get bored. But since what we say has to be suited to them, we grow weary. They go and speak unkindly of us and say that we got bored with them and run away. How can the kindling run away from the pot? The pot may run away when it cannot endure the fire. But when the fire appears to run away, it's not running away at all, but it's withdrawing because it sees that the pot is weak. Therefore, however it may seem, the truth is that it is the pot that runs away. Our running away then is really their running away. We are a mirror, and if there is a desire to run away in them, it appears in us. We do the running away for them. A mirror is that in which one sees oneself. If they think we are bored, the boredom is really theirs. Boredom is a quality of weakness, and this is no place for boredom or weariness.
So yeah, Maulana says there are people coming to me, and they see that, if I'm silent, they become bored, they become offended. Why are you silent? And if I want to say something, I should say something that's fitting to their level. As the Prophet ﷺ says, you should talk with people according to their intellects. So you cannot pour an ocean into a cup. So people bring different containers. Some people bring a teacup, and that teacup has to be filled. Some people bring a larger container, and so on. So Maulana says, yes, there are people coming to me, and they're worldly people. So I have to, if I want to talk with them, I have to talk about the weather, or I have to talk about, what's happening in the market, the prices, things like that. And when I talk about such things, I suffer. It's a burden for me to talk about them. And they think that I'm silent, it's, they get offended, but they shouldn't get offended. They shouldn't get offended because hizom as dik kegolizat. How can the firewood flee from the pot? So Maulana says, I'm like that fire. I'm like that fire. My nature is burning. My nature is radiating this heat. My nature is radiating this light. So if this firewood is not ready for that fire, and you see that the fire is running away, it's not the fire that's running away. It's that firewood that's not ready. It's that pot that's weak and needs to work on itself so that it's ready to accept that fire. So if you see that the pot flees, or if you see that the fire flees, in either case, it's the pot that's fleeing. The fleeing comes from them, because truth does not flee. The spiritual realities, they're not shy. They're not. They don't escape, but they do see. Are you ready or are you not ready? So, and there are different levels of readiness. There are different levels of readiness. So even, in the Quran, even Musa alayhi salam, who was a prophet, he was not ready. So he asks Allah, Arini, show me your I want to show yourself to me. I want to look at you. And that's what a lover says. A lover has that thirst to look at the beloved. And what does Allah say? Lan tarani, you will not see me, but look at the mountain. And then he reveals his majesty to that mountain, and that mountain is crumbled into dust, and Moses is so overwhelmed that he falls unconscious. So there are different levels of readiness. Even again in the story of Moses and Khizr, he goes to find this companion, and he says, I will not question you. And he says, you cannot be patient with me. You do not have that readiness to be patient with me. And you know the story in Surah Al-Kahf. So the question is, even a prophet was the highest degree of sainthood, but his pot was not ready for that fire of the divine essence. So Maulana says, always you need to work on yourself. Always work on your own readiness, on your own receptivity. So instead of saying, oh, that teacher seems distant, or, secrets are being hidden from me. No, instead think about yourself. My pot is weak. My firewood is weak. I need to work on myself and make my pot stronger, readier, so that I can handle this heat of divine love. And here Maulana uses again the imagery of a mirror. Ma'ayanain, we're a mirror. Does a mirror escape from people? No, it's the people, right? Sometimes that scape which is in them, it appears in us, but the mirror does not escape. So that symbolism of the mirror, Nizami says, oh, negar aibib to bin mood rast. If the mirror shows your faults, khud shakan, break yourself. It's an error to break the mirror.
I was just reminded of a passage from the Maqalat-e-Shams, which in William Chittick's translation, which is related to this passage, in that Shamsuddin Tabrizi says, he has this way of saying something very unusual, like articulation. He says that, where are these words coming from? Like, from where to where? Like, he was speaking probably to Maulana. Obviously, he's speaking to Maulana. Like, where are these great words coming from and where are they going to? And then he says that, I understood. These are coming from God and these are going to Maulana. And I'm just through me it is going. So then I told these words and stop. If you're coming to me, you come to me. And if you want to go to Maulana, you go to Maulana or something like that. Why are you coming through me to him? Like, this is that Maulana's, what is God actually brought Shams as a kind of message bearer for Maulana, or rather he is the channel through which God is like addressing Maulana, and he feels it, and like he's conscious of being that channel, and the words that flow from him, obviously this is the opposite of what Maulana is saying here in a sense, because these listeners, I think this is in the context of his sessions. Like I was thinking, like we have these sessions, Maulana was having his sessions with his students and probably his associates, his companions, and sometimes maybe the flow of ideas might have just slowed down a bit, and then he would have reflected on that. And I was just imagining that, why is it slow? Maybe must be some obstruction somewhere. Maybe people are not like interested enough. They're not keen enough. And I'm also reminded of another verse from the Masnavi, which said that, it said that in sukhan shirast dar pistane jan bi kashande khush nami gardad rawan, he said. And you can probably translate that best. So that I think relates to this particular passage, I think.
100%, absolutely. In Sukhan Shiraz dar pistane jan, my words are like milk in the breast of the soul. So, but there has to be someone to suck the breast. Otherwise, the milk will not flow. And that's the listener, the great listener. And Maulana says that's the mahrami, the language of being a mahram. So چون که نامحرم درآید از برم, when the people who are not mahram come to my gatherings, the people who do not share this secret, they're not, they don't have that passion in them. چون که نامحرم درآید از برم, پرده در پنهان شوند اهل حرم. The women of the harem, right? They hide themselves, they hide their faces, and they behind the curtains. So those women represent the secrets, the mysteries. I'm not going to reveal them because there are some people who are not mahram. چون درآید محرمی دور از گزند. But when the mahrams come in, when I see that there are people who have that secret, who have that passion, who have that love, چون درآید محرمی دور از گزند, برگشایند آن ستیران روی بند. Those veiled beauties will lift their face veils. So, and this is true. Again, Maulana, they say that every time they invited Maulana, they would invite Maulana with Husamuddin Chalabi together. Because if they invited Maulana himself, he would be quiet. He would be silent. But they would invite Husamuddin Chalabi because he was the listener. So he was the one who would suck those, the milk of wisdom. So he had that. And then Maulana would talk.
The wisdom of gradual action. It happened to me that once in the bath, I was acting excessively humble towards Shaykh Salahuddin, and he was being excessively humble towards me. As I complained of his humility, the thought occurred to me that I was overdoing my own meekness and that it would be better to do it gradually. First, you should rub someone's hand and then his feet until little by little he becomes so accustomed to it that he no longer notices. You must not, of course, inconvenience him, and you must match courtesy with courtesy. When you will accustom him by degrees to your humility, as one acts in this manner with friends, so also one must act in the same manner with enemies, that is, little by little, gradually. For example, first of all, you give an enemy advice a little bit at a time. If he doesn't listen, you slap him. If he doesn't listen, you drive him away. In the Quran, it is said, rebuke them and remove them into separate apartments and chastise them. Thus, go to the affairs of this world. Don't you see how springs serenity and affability in the beginning spread their warmth little by little and then increase? See how the trees sprout little by little at first, then put out buds, and then grab themselves in leaves and fruit, and then, like the dervishes and Sufis, offered to give away everything they have. Everything they have. If man rushes into works of this world and the next, and exaggerates at the beginning, his labor is not easy. Here is a disciplined way. A man who normally eats a mound of bread should eat a dram less every day. Gradually, after a year or two, he will cut his consumption in half, and the body will not notice the reduction. Acts of devotion, retreat, obedience to divine law, and ritual prayer are just like this. A man who wants to pray wholeheartedly and enter on God's way should first observe the first prescribed daily prayers. Later, he can increase the number infinitely.
So Maulana is in the bathhouse with Sheikh Salahuddin Zarkub, who is one of the great spiritual friends of Maulana. He's a goldsmith by trade, but he's also a wali of Allah. He's also one of those hearts that Maulana is so close to and devoted to. And many of his ghazals, he mentions Salahuddin, ay Shah Salahuddin man, Rahdan man, Rahbin man. You're the one who sees the path, who knows the path. So he's showing humility to Salahuddin. So, and someone like Maulana, as he says, he's a mirror. So, and likewise, people like Salahuddin, they were mirrors. So what happens when you have two mirrors facing each other? You see the infinite. So they saw the infinite in each other. So they saw that in each other. And that's why they show this much humility towards each other. So, and every time Maulana praises someone like Salahuddin or someone like Husamuddin, you forget which one was the master, which one was the student, because of so much humility. Now, Maulana shows Salahuddin humility and Salahuddin shows Maulana humility. So each of them is going to out humble one another. So that's the extreme humility that makes the other person uncomfortable, because the other person thinks, oh, I need to do more. I need to reciprocate. So Maulana says, at that time, it occurred to me that everything, including humility, has to be done gradually, so that the other person can absorb that without feeling overwhelmed, without feeling they owe something, they have to reciprocate. And Maulana says everything in this world, whether you want to make friends, you want to show enmity, you want to show friendship, it's always better to do gradually. It's always better to do gradually. And he gives an example from the Quran. So the Quran talks about the rebellious wife. It has to be, so the spirit is gradually, right? You talk first. If it doesn't work, then you forsake them in bed. So different levels, different grades. And then he gives the example from nature. The spring doesn't happen suddenly. It doesn't happen, the trees just bear fruit in one day. No, it's one smile. It starts with a bud. It starts with then leaves and then fruit in stages. And then in harvest time, you have all the fruits. So it doesn't happen suddenly. And same it is with winter. Again, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. Now, Maulana comes to the spiritual path. The spiritual path, likewise. So if you want to discipline your soul, maybe you used to, agar kasi, Maulana says, kasi mani nan mikhorad. A person eats a ton of food. And nan in Persian can mean bread, and more generally it can mean food in general. Someone eats a ton. Now, if this person, if you tell him to reduce that consumption by half, well, that person might do that for a week. But then the next Friday, he will say, actually, you know what? No. And he will go back to what he used to eat. That's not effective. So what's effective? You want this person to eat less. You will tell them each day, yik dirham sang, a dirham. So it's like a silver coin, less than the day before. So decrease your consumption each day by the weight of a silver coin, a little bit less each day. Now, what happens in a year and in 2 years? That person will reduce the consumption to probably half a man. All right, that's the Persian units of weight. So if he does it gradually, he doesn't feel the reduction. He doesn't feel that pain of reduction. So this is a way to trick your nafs. So, and likewise, again, with worship, with namaz, rozeh, with seclusion, khalvat, all of these things. If someone who doesn't pray at all, so someone who's recently become a Muslim, or there are Muslims who don't pray, and they want to start praying, so what should you tell them? The beginning is you do 5 prayers. You do the 5 daily prayers, nothing else, just the 5 daily prayers. Now, after a time, when they're established in doing the 5 daily prayers, then you can tell them, oh, there are extra prayers you could do. You could do sunnah prayers. You could do this prayer, that prayer. That's extra. But the first step is the 5 daily prayers. So, yeah, Maulana here is touching on that concept of gradualism, being gradual. Some people have that zeal to, suddenly give up something suddenly. And Maulana says, no, this is a gradual path. You need to go little by little. As in Persian, we say, aheste wa payvaste. Very slowly, but continuously. That is better than gehi tondo gehi khaste. The Persian poem, Rahr an ast ke aheste wa payvaste ravad. The wayfarer, the true wayfarer, is the one who goes quite slowly, but also continuously. He's not the one who goes fast, but sometimes fast and sometimes slowly, right? Because ultimately what lasts is not what comes by force. It's not what comes with harshness. It's what comes naturally, with gentleness, with slowness. That's what lasts. So the slow and the continuous.
Regarding the Persian proverb that you mentioned, I think it's analogous to the English, slow and steady wins the race. I think the idea is the same. And I was thinking
So
that this particular saying by Maulana, or rather this passage, is a bit unusual to me, in the sense that he's generally not a person who speaks about gradualism when he talks about love and all that, the idea of the lovers. And he said, Sakht mustasqis tijani sadiqan, and all he has said in other places, Nist zurgibban wasife ashiqan, Sakht mustasqis tijani sadiqan, and all. I think he's speaking, here is speaking as a counselor, a kind of psychologist, or depending on the audience that he's speaking with. He's probably speaking that, like you mentioned, those who have just emerged into either the path or the religion, in the sense that if you tell something very very challenging or very difficult for them, they should not. And so his tone, his tone is a little very interesting and gentle in this. I think it possibly reflects the audience which he's speaking to.
So yeah, I mean, in general, Maulana is also talking about respecting. There is a time for everything. There is a season for everything. So we can't always expect immediate results. Sometimes we need to be patient. So the spring does not come in a day. It comes day after day, after waiting. And he says that in the Fihi also about the Quran. So the Quran is a shy bride. If you forcefully try to take away her veil, she will refuse to show you her face. But if you serve her day after day, so each day you become a step closer. And that's service, courting the Quran. Maulana calls it courting the Quran. Then she will show her face to you. So it's also about not losing hope and the slow and steady, right? But also, yes, in Maulana, we do have the radical aspect as well. So that's not slow and steady, right? So Maulana says, yekbaragi, all of a sudden. Sometimes you need to jump into the sometimes he throws you into the deep end, right? So yeah, there is both. So it could be because of who he's talking to.
You mentioned regarding the Quran, even the revelation of the Quran itself, Nazzalnahu Tanzila, in the sense that Inna Anzalnahu fi Laylatil Qadr, and all these things about it came slowly, like one occasion by occasion. Although in a way, I think the Prophet, we do not know how the Prophet might have received it, or was it a synthetic, he had it all, and then gradually it came one by one, or whatever it's known to. Probably it's one of one of the mysteries that we are not in any way privy to. But still, the idea that the Quran came one by one and passage by passage, verse by verse, as the prophetic life unfolded, itself seems to be a teaching, or a God's teaching. And the prophet's teaching itself, he has said that I'm a teacher, innama bu'istu mu'alliman. And then his teaching was also very gradual, and he spoke very gently to people. And he mentioned that that idea that because I think another point, regarding the Prophet's teaching that came to mind, is that he might have said these things to various people at various times. I was thinking that as from the perspective of getting these reports and then applying them, if we do not understand that idea that these are all for certain people at certain times, like Maulana here is hinting, this whole idea of hadith as a kind of to apply it without any proper nuanced understanding of the methodology, in the sense that the basic larger principles of, say, love or mercy or rahma ilahiya or hub, but these things are not there in some of these people who bring out these hadiths and various words, and then they are so harsh with it. And I think they sometimes, I feel they may be violating the prophetic spirit, although they might be bringing a lot of hadiths and verses to bolster their argument. I think that's the point also came to mind.
An extension of what you said, and Brother Ashfaq, I think that in many cases, the usage of the verses of the Quran and Hadiths in these scenarios where people want to bolster their argument, in reality, they're not really interested in truth. They're just interested in satisfying their ego. by cloaking their arguments with the verses of the Quran and the Hadiths. That's, of course, classical in the playbook of radicalists. And I mean, that's why we saw groups like ISIS, right? Or what we see with the Taliban now, unfortunately, that people simply abuse the religion to satisfy their own ego. That's, of course, where Maulana really sets himself apart from everyone by saying that religion is much deeper than following rules, right? That you must understand, come to the deep understanding, and not simply blindly follow the rules. And this can, of course, only happen very slowly by careful implementation, by careful thinking, and by careful practice. And not being harsh, because the Quran, of course, was revealed over a period of 20 to 23 years ago to the Muslims. And many of the changes came very gradually throughout history. Like, if we think of something like slavery, I mean, the idea of owning another human being is quite abhorrent in itself. But if the Quran, the first verse came down and said, abolish slavery, the economy would have collapsed completely and nobody would have followed the religion, because the economy heavily relied on slavery. Just like the economy today relies to some extent on tobacco. But by revealing verses like, if you miss a prayer, then free a slave, or if you marry a woman who is a slave, she will be free, and so on and so forth. But by repeating these verses and using all of these principles, Islam gradually abolished slavery in history. And that's quite important, because being harsh and wanting immediate change in people, that can only lead to extremism and radicalism, which comes from the ego. It doesn't come from the divine.
Even the prohibition of alcohol, it was not sudden, it was gradual. So at first it was a warning. There are benefits, but there's sin in it, and the sin is greater. So be cautious about drinking. And then a few years later, it was, when you're praying, make sure you haven't drunk before praying, right? So before prayer, do not drink, so that when you're praying, you know what you're saying. So naturally, I mean, you have the 5 daily prayers. It's throughout the day. It was really difficult for people to drink, right? Unless it was after Isha or so on. And then finally, you had the total prohibition. So it was a gradual. Right? It was done gradually, even with something like wine or intoxicants, because that was also so integral to the Arab culture. Say the Aisha says, if the first thing that was revealed was, do not drink wine, do not engage in zina, people wouldn't have become Muslim. People wouldn't have joined this religion. If the first thing that was revealed was that, just rules. But the first thing that was revealed was all about giving us that vision of the other world, changing our perspective. Instead of seeing this world as all that is, knowing that there is something else, there's something beyond this world. And when that happened, when our eyes opened to the unseen and our love for God and for the Prophet, and we had the other wine, the wine of remembrance of God, then letting go of this wine was easy. So, the Meccan work, all the surahs, the Meccan surahs, the surahs that were revealed in Mecca, there are very few legal rules in those surahs. There's very few, you shall do this, you shall not do this. Most of those surahs, they're about building that awareness of God, building that consciousness of God. And yeah, of course, in Medina, you have a Muslim community. So any community, you need rules for that society to function. You need certain rules. So you have rules about, I mean, worship, but also about marriage, also about divorce, also about all aspects of life, social life, so that this society can function. But before we get to the Medinan period, we need to do the Meccan work. We need to have that. We need to, before we know, the legal aspects or the minute details of prayer, we need to know, who are we praying to? Why do we need to pray? What does prayer do to us? We need to know that. And then, yes, you can, and it's important, it is essential to know those details to the extent that it's necessary for worship. You need to know those as well. But the main thing is, أقم الصلاة لذكري. Prayer is for remembrance. It's for remembering me. The purpose of prayer is not bowing like this, or sujood like this, or where you put your hands, or that's the form of prayer. But the meaning of prayer, the qalb of prayer, the heart of prayer is dhikrullah. Wala dhikrullah akbar. Prayer is important, but the remembrance of Allah is greater. It's greater than the form of prayer.
Regarding the prohibition of alcohol, I think the last verse, the final definitive thing in the Quran was mentioned. I mean, at the end of the whole process, like gradual process that you have, you described. I think the verse was, "Fahal antum muntahun." Will you then not abstain? It's a question. Fahal antum muntahun. I think because it's been prepared. Like everything is clear. Now will you not abstain? Like, is there anything left to be done except to just throw away what is not good? So in that sense, it's a very beautiful, like I was thinking, there is this in psychology, in de-addiction, there's something called motivational interviewing. It's a very successful method. It's not just general motivation, but motivational interviewing, MI it's called. So that has actually is very much like this, in the sense that that verse that you mentioned earlier, that there is ismuhuma akbaru min naf'ihima, the idea that there are some benefits in alcohol. So let us give the devil his due, as they say. Let us not think that alcohol is all bad and all those people who drink are evil or fools. But that would be like a self-righteous posture and a kind of thing that is not fit. That's not like very wise. So people drink for a reason. I mean, they are not fools. So they find in it something. Like we mentioned, they're looking for the right thing in the wrong place. So they are looking for something, which I think, so that part of it, and also there are benefits and there are harms. And that the Quran has clearly alluded. And I think from there, people can think that what am I gaining and what am I losing? And when they think like that, that's when they start like getting that. So then whoever, the person who's helping them, he can build on this. And then gradually they'll reach a stage where fahal antum muntahun. Like, what is left now except to just do the necessary thing, in the sense, and avoid the unnecessary. And then it becomes a natural organic process by which he doesn't then have to really struggle to stop, but then it happens like that. I think that's the methodology which Maulana here seems to be like, it's a very sophisticated kind of approach which he's expressing in his discourse here in this particular section, this gradualism, and applying that to religion, and also about, I think, diet also he's mentioning here, eating food. Like, it's a very big issue in the contemporary world, for example, in terms of weight and diet and issues, how to stop, how to have a disciplined life and lifestyle and diet. And I think the roots of all that, I think Maulana is alluding to here.
Because you mentioned, hal antum muntahun. For a long time, I remember when I was reading the Quran, and there are some verses in the Quran that are ayatul ahkam. You should do this or that. That verse is about a particular ruling, and then I remember at the end of the ayah it says, "Wallahu ghafurur rahim." God is all forgiving. God is compassionate. God is wise. God is so on. And I was thinking, what does this ending have to do with the ayah? I was thinking to myself, why not just the ruling? This is how you should pray, or this is how you should, do this or do that. Why do you end? Why does Allah end the ayah with God is forgiving. God is wise. God is knowing. And then I realized, even in those ayahs that are ayat al-ahkam, the rules, Allah is bringing us back to why are we doing this? For whom are we doing this? Even in those ayahs, this is who God is. This is the God that you're worshiping, the God that you're praying to. God is compassionate. God is forgiving. God is loving. God is wise. So you need to know God so that those worships become meaningful. So, because I remember, I at the beginning when I was reading the Quran, those endings, I couldn't relate them to the beginning of the verse. Or that this verse is about this ruling. Why does Allah say Allahu Ghafurun Rahim? What does it have to do? But yes, everything that we do, we don't do it just because to tick a checkbox, because that's what a Muslim should be doing. But because Allah, we need to know Allah. We need to come closer to Allah, because that's, again, everything. It's all about that relationship. Everything in this religion, it's all about that relationship. Allah.
Allah Ghafurur Rahim is mostly, you find in most of the verses of Quran. In any instructions at the end, Allah Ghafurur Rahim, He will forgive you if you ask for forgiveness. Having said that, I like the explanation as mentioned about the spring, process of a spring to fruition of a tree. For example, you see birds, flowers, leaves, and the fruit in the end. So this is the process we need to understand, human being as a human being. So I hope people do that as well.
And Molana in this passage is also against perfectionism in the sense that sometimes the perfect becomes the enemy of the good, right? So because, let's say, there are people who, as Molana's own example, eat a ton, they think it's impossible. Sometimes we read, the stories of the awliya and the, tadkiratul awliya and so on, and it's this is beautiful, but it's impossible. Where am I? Where are those people? It's far away. So Molana says, no, don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Okay, maybe you can't do. We read in the Tadkiratul Awliya there were people who prayed all night. Maybe you can't pray all night. Okay, but pray 2 rak'ahs. That's better than nothing, right? Maybe you can't, read the whole Quran in every week. And there were people who did that in Islam. But read, 3 ayahs each day. What's wrong with that? And then the next day do 5 verses. So that's the gradual. Maulana is talking about the gradual approach.
I just one of the things is that after the prayer, after the like Assalamu alaikum, the first thing I think, at least in the fiqh that we follow in here and all, it's astaghfirullah. Some people say Allahu Akbar. I don't know whether what everyone follows. So if it is astaghfirullah, then that makes sense, in the sense that whatever done it, there'll be a lot of faults, and we recognize that whatever you think you may have done, it's nothing in the eyes of God, in the sense that unless He accepts it out of His pure mercy and overlooks its numerous faults. So that brings you back to the on the ground, and also you can, for example, I was thinking another thing, like when you mentioned about these stories of saints in the various like Tazkiratul Awliya, even Aflaki's Manaqib al-Arifin of Maulana and all that, there is some pious exaggeration. In that there is no doubt.
Yeah.
That is like and also this idea that the prophetic, there is this thing that examples are all mostly very gentle as well as easy to follow many a time. Ad-Dinu Yusr, it's mentioned, Innamal Usri Yusran, Yuridullahu bikumul Yusra, and all those things. And then the Prophet himself took a very, sometimes an extremely demanding way of being. For example, he used to pray all night, and then when I think this Aisha radhiyallahu anha asked, and then he said, Afala akuna abudan shakura, he said. So that, that is his gratefulness, his thankfulness. He didn't even see that his feet were swollen with continuous standing. But whenever he is dealing with others, I think what one finds is a very gentle approach rather than a harsh one. For example, the imam should not prolong the prayer, as if like so many people are there who, for example, small children will be there and so on. So I think this is something that has been missed to an extent in today's discourses. So you can be harsh to yourself. I think if you can, you should be, because the nafs, and you have to conquer it, dominate it. There's no like quarter given in a kind of war or something like that. But then with others, obviously one has to be like mostly generous. But the opposite is seen in many so-called pious people today. Like they're very harsh with the others, and look at them, they might be cutting all kinds of corners in terms of their whatever finances or whatever else it might be. So this is, I think, a sign of the times of the religion having been slightly like being abused. Historically, I think this example of the Khawarij have been given as the kind of thing that Ali Jan was saying, the people who like abusing the Quran. I mean, maybe Arabic and maybe some lot of verses, a few verses they have on their lips and so on. And then I don't want to be controversial, but still, I think it has been mentioned regarding the neo-Khawarij in the world of today. Like there is that tendency, and that is the kind of tendency that is besetting us to a significant extent. I think I don't want to say anything further.
I mean, there are several challenges, of course, and there is a simple litmus test for assessing whether one is being radicalized and harsh in one's state of being, essentially. When one is more harsh towards oneself and wants to become even, more pious and practices the religion even more and reads the Quran or starts the memorization. There is a simple test to see whether that is truly for the sake of Allah or it is for the sake of ego. If that perception of piousness that one has when one begins to engage in greater and greater actions on the deen, if one becomes more judgmental, more bitter about other people, more harsh, and more angry, then that's a clear sign that it's not for the sake of Allah. It's for the sake of satisfying the ego. Because if it is for the sake of Allah, then, as Allah says, the reciting of the Quran and zikr should bring sakina and calmness to the heart. And naturally, a person who is calm cannot be judgmental and harsh about the state of other people. Rather, he tries to contribute to the best of his ability in society. But if the opposite is true, then it is for the sake of the ego. And, there are many verses in the Quran about Allah condemning the ego and so on, and promoting humility, as it is said by the great companion Ibn Mas'ud, that one of the first things that we learned from the Prophet ﷺ was humility, because it was the lack of humility that led shaitan or iblis out of Allah's grace. And that's quite important in today's world, where we see people who are apparently pious, but they're totally indifferent to the state of other Muslims in the world.
Thank you, Anja. And that humility is really important. So, one of the problems with that is kept arrogance. And sometimes it veils itself as religious zeal, right? As Maulana calls hamiyat din, right? He says, Nangarat dar khish nafs gabr. He doesn't recognize the gabr, the infidel nafs within himself. Hamiyat din khahadu an kebra. And he calls his arrogance, he calls it the zeal for religion. And the sign is when he sees someone else doing something wrong, something slightly wrong, he gets angry, he gets aggressive. And that aggression comes from the fire of hell. It doesn't come from religion. Because that fire that comes from hell. It comes from hell. It's someone arrogant who's seeing someone else doing something wrong, making a mistake. And then he calls that the religious zeal. But it's not religious zeal. The people who care for religion, it has other signs. And that sign is gentleness, is rifq, kindness. And that's, something that's so fundamental, so essential to the religion. So as Sayyidina Rasulullah, he says, there's nothing that kindness is added to it except that it makes it more beautiful. Illa zanah. And it was not taken away from anything. If you remove kindness was not removed from anything except that it made it ugly. The true religious seal is always has that element of rahmah, of kindness, of love within it. For everything, for everyone. As again in the hadith of Sayyidina Rasulullah, irhamu man fil ard. Be kind, be merciful, be loving to everything that's on earth. Yarhamukum man fis sama. And the one who is in heaven will be kind to you. So it's not limited to one group. Be kind only to Muslims. No, be kind to everyone. Kindness does not know any limits. Not even to humans. Right?
In response to what Alijan was saying, I was thinking of the word radical. When you say radicalized, radical, I think this is a problematic and like ambiguous word, in the sense that when Maulana says usuli, actually radix means root. Radix means root. So root, going to the root, is it a crime of some sort? In the idea that, for example, Omid Safi, one of the great scholars, I think a professor at Duke University, he has a beautiful book called Radical Love. And I think in that book he expresses the fact that he includes Maulana and others in this is a mazhab-e ishq, like Ahmad al-Ghazali and others, who even saw Satan as a lover, and that's all ambiguous. But still, in the sense that radical love as a mazhab-e ishq in the path, which, as you mentioned, it knows no limits, in the sense that root of the root of the root. And also, I mean, to a lesser extent, if you were the word fundamental to the religion, now what they have got is fundamentalism that is going on. These are all ambiguous terms, I think. Even radical is very ambiguous. Fundamentalism, obviously, it is from the context of Protestant Christianity and a certain type of Puritanism. Whether if you apply it across the board to other these things, it would be a error, and as we are seeing it. So these errors compound in the media and other places to make a very distorting kind of verbiage that goes by the name of the discourse in many media. This thing, all these, they are just throwing about all these ambiguous, meaningless, or rather terms, and then they call it discussion or commentary.
Mm-hmm. If there's one true fundamentalist Muslim, he's Maulana Rumi. Because he's talking about the fundamentals, the real fundamentals. Usul al-din, right? So yeah, he is a fundamentalist. He is radical in his own way, in the true way, right? But these words have become, again, cheapened, and journalists, they've used it in, the people that they call fundamentalists are the people who are only concerned with the superficials. They're not concerned with the fundamentals. So they shouldn't be called fundamentalists.
I was we were talking about radicalism and fundamentalism, and I was just reminded of during the time of, unfortunately, when ISIS was in power in Iraq, of the story of this Yazidi boy who was he was saved from ISIS, and then he was interviewed, and he said that whenever I hear verses of the Quran being recited, I shiver and I begin to sweat from fear, because all of these ISIS fighters forced us to wake up in the morning, very early in the morning, to pray and to read the Quran. And if you couldn't do it, they would beat us. So I'm traumatized by hearing the verses of the Quran. And that is just a clear indication of how wrong the methodology was, right? That as you and Brother Ashraf correctly mentioned, that it has nothing to do with foundations of religion and the fundamentals, but it's superficiality, right? That's what it is. That's unfortunately what we see nowadays, that people ignore foundational verses of the Quran. For instance, the verse that clearly prohibits any form of compulsion in religion. And even that verse superficially it is understood as entering the religion is not, there's no compulsion upon entering the religion, but more deeply it describes a process that at no point is there any compulsion in practicing religion, in the sense that nobody, even if they identify as Muslim, they cannot be compelled to practice the religion because the verse clearly prohibits that process. But unfortunately, when these foundational verses are not taught carefully and not reflected upon, then we see that people use superficiality to oppress other people. And the Quran, that is the verses of mercy of Allah, unfortunately, is a factor of trauma for small children, or becomes traumatic, which is so unfortunate.
In response to what Alijan was saying, I think also that many of the things, manifestations that we are seeing are actually inverted reflections in the term of, I mean, using a idea from Sheikh Abdul Wahid Yahya, Reneganon. These are like caricatures and parodies. In that way, the most dangerous lie is the clever lie. In the sense that if it's a blatant lie, we can catch it. Like, for example, to use an American word, they use the word bullshit, for example, the mixture of, it's that peculiarly American media is full of that. So this idea that lies and truth are some way mixed together, and also there is no concern with the truth, first of all, it's some strange mixture. And also this, so that way, and the caricatures and parodies are the idea that he mentioned. So I was thinking that when Alijan mentioned regarding that trauma that somebody underwent as a result of being, say, forced to recite the Quran. Like in the Quran, there is this verse which says, "Idha zukirallahu wajilat qulubuhum," like that tremor that is felt by the believer when the name of God is mentioned. Obviously, that's something subtle and something tremendous, in the sense that we're mentioning, I mean, it's God's name mentioned. There is a tremor in the believer's heart. Innama yakhshallahu min ibadihi al-ulama, and all. So that khashya. So that and this kind of fear is, or rather inducing fear, or that type of fear, I think that it bears a very like indirect, but at the same time a kind of like it's a fake, or a fake type of, or inverted reflection, like the gold plated ornaments and all, if they might say, like it looks like that, but it's not like that. And many a thing is that's why I think a lot of people are falling for it too, because there is that mixture of truth and falsehood. And I think in a sense, I think that it could be like these are the kind of things that the imposter and the Dajjalian phenomenon may manifest itself as, using religious terms and using probably Arabic words, using probably Quran misused. And I think a large number of people may fall into it without the real recognition of the roots of the roots of the roots of the religion that Maulana is speaking. I think that will be an antidote in the time of like fakes and caricatures and parodies all around, like what is fake and what is true, and the true gold, like you mentioned, versus the coated fake gold. I think words of Maulana and others like him who have gone to the root of the root of the root is probably the only reliable criterion to detect such fakes and parodies and counterfeits.
Thank you. You know, reminds me of the story that Maulana says in the Masnavi. There was this muazzin who had a really ugly, really disharmonious voice. It was really ugly. And he goes to Kafiristan, so non-Muslim land, and he gives the call to prayer. And because this voice is so ugly, everyone hates that. Everyone hates azan. And then the next day, one of the Kafirs, one of the non-Muslims there, comes with a gift to this person and says, "What is this gift?" He says, "Look, my daughter was so interested in becoming a Muslim, but after hearing the call to prayer, you know, she asked, 'What is this?' And I said, 'This is the azan.' She decided to leave Islam, and she left Islam. And I'm so happy that that happened." And then Maulana says, "Has iman shama zar o majaz." This is the faith that's, you know, you take the label, you take the name, but you don't take the reality. The reality, you don't take the kindness, you don't take the gentleness, you don't take the rahmah. but you take the forms. And what happens is people flee. Yeah, people flee from this kind of religion. And if we take our religion from so and so, if we take our religion from people are people. People can disappoint us. But we need to take, if we base our religion on so and so and so and so, that's not stable. What if we go back, if you're able to go back to the root of the root of the root, we're able to, first of all, be really grounded in the Quran, in the Sunnah, have that personal relationship with the prophets, with the tradition. Then it's so easy. You can recognize this is not true gold. Only people who know true gold, they can recognize counterfeit gold. Only people who've tasted real honey, they can recognize something that's not real honey. It's called honey, but it's not real honey. So only if you're in a real relationship with Allah. And the moment you say, in Islam, we have this, it's one of the beauties of Islam is, there is no when you say Allahu Akbar, it's you and Allah. It doesn't matter if that mullah is, is not a good person or is corrupt or so on. No, it doesn't matter. It's you and Allah. You say Allahu Akbar, you're in prayer, it's you and Allah. You have that direct relationship with Allah. So that's also true, Yes, there are people doing bad things in the name of Islam. But again, real gold is real gold. Real honey is real honey. The real relationship between you and Allah, that's real. And as long as you have that, then your iman, your faith will be firm.
Yeah, there is a beautiful couplet by Maulana where he says, دویی از خود به در کردم یکی دیدم دو عالم را یکی جویم یکی دانم یکی بینم یکی خوانم.
Allah.
I abandoned duality and I saw the world as one. I sought oneness. I have known oneness. I see oneness and I read oneness.
Oneness. Allah.
And which is quite beautiful. That's what we need nowadays.
Allah, indeed. Exactly. As in the Quran, قُلِ اللَّهِ, say Allah, and then leave them. Leave everyone else. Say Allah. That's the whole message is summarized in that one word. I say one. I say Allah. Yakidana. I know one. There's only one I know. There's only one I call on.
I was just reminded there is in the Aflaki's Manaqib al-Arifin, there is a section wherein somebody asks Maulana, I think, I don't know, it's that in that report, that what is, most people have these various invocations, like what is ours? Like, I think some examples are given, like La ilaha illallah, or some people say that, some people say this. What is ours? He asks. And then Maulana replies, it is Allah, Allah. And I think, and also it's mentioned that in the hadith that the last day will not arrive till there is someone who says Allah, Allah.
Allah, Allah.
In the sense that is actually everything. In the sense, everything is included in that. And you say Allah, Qulillah, thumma darhum fi khawdihim yal'abun, that you mentioned. Basically, that is in synthetic form, includes everything. Obviously, that in the sense that it is a synthetic like summary, or rather the seed of the seed, or the root of the root of the root that is mentioned.
As you know, the Arabic poem, Wajhul Mahbub, Ghayatul Matlub, the face of the beloved is all that you seek. There's nothing else. So yeah, inshallah, next week we're going to start a new passage from Fihi. This passage is in Arabic, so most of Fihi is in Persian, but this passage is in Arabic. So Maulana is talking about a person called Ibn Chawash, who was backbiting with regard to Sheikh Salahuddin Zarkub, who is, of course, this close spiritual friend of Maulana. And Maulana is warning this person, you do not You do not recognize that people traveled from far away, from Hind to Sindh, from India to Sindh. They left their families, their fathers, their mothers, their tribes to meet a man of God, to meet a saint. And you have that saint with you in the same city, in the same town, and yet you do not recognize the worth of this person, and yet you do not listen to him. So Maulana is, in this passage, he's talking about being patient with a spiritual teacher. So there may be things that he says that sounds to your nafs as bitter, but you need to take that bitter medicine